individuals, and helped me to sort of look at where I was and the way that I was growing up in a different light. Because prior to that, it had been normal to me. It had been normal to me to come home from school and see kilos of dope and cocaine on my tables, and to really try to focus on that as being something that's dysfunction and that this is not real life. So it was a very, very important experience for me to be at the center. I'll share more after this story, after this song. There's real times in life where we always feel like, why does this keep happening to me? And it feels like I've seen this before. And it feels like a rerun. So that's what it is. Feel like I've been watching this on rerun, yeah. I done had some lows, yeah, but we on, yeah. Big talking ain't never what we on, yeah. So I gave them a shoulder they can lean on, yeah. Hey, yeah, but I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. You know they be calling, but I'm on the go for the win, so they be stalling, yeah. They wanna see me down, but I ain't falling, yeah. Yeah, pick up and do it like I did it when I hit him with the God thing, yeah. We on the home team, yeah. We gon' pick up, tack it, flip it. Hit me with the gold trumpet or the gold midget. Whole world's in his hand, but he playing cricket. Didn't wanna listen, now we headed to the finish. I got energy, yeah. We all friends, we not friends. Love to my enemies, yeah. We pretend I can't bend 120 on the beat, but we got the heat. They gon' feel it in their feet. We gon' wake them up to sleep. Hey, 10 up, 10 down, rerun it, play it loud. Like I've been watching it on rerun, yeah. I done had some lows, yeah, but we all know. Big talking ain't never what we on, yeah. So I gave them a shoulder they can lean on, yeah. Hey, but I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. Hey, but I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. So I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. Hey, 10 up, 10 down, rerun it. Hey. Back for the hiccup, fresh off the press, I got the rest, open like the back of the pickup. I get the stress off my chest, yeah, this my thing, yeah, this my team, yeah. We gon' win, roll with me, yeah. This day chance, this just sin. I've been high, and I've been low. I've been shaking on the floor, like the Holy Ghost, hold me close. Yeah, you ain't got it, cause you can't get it. Look, I rerun it, yeah, they gon' listen. Like I've been watching it on rerun, yeah. I done had some lows, yeah, but we on now. Big talking ain't never what we on, yeah. So I gave them a shoulder they can lean on, yeah. But I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. So I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. So I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off, I'm dusting them off. Dust off the problems, dust off the lies, dust off the reruns. Very interesting. So after going to the center and being there, age 13, finally after building a relationship with these people, they invited me to a camp. I ended up going with them to this camp. I'll never forget it. Wild Horse Canyon. It was in the middle of nowhere in Oregon. No offense to Oregon, but for me, it was just always in the way of me getting to California from Washington. But shout out to Oregon. um, anyway, so it was in the middle of nowhere, and I was there at this camp. And it's very easy once you're out and you're in an immersive environment of being able to be around other people. Um, and what was interesting there, they tried to put you with people that are very similar to you. So I had an opportunity to be with other people, also inner city kids who were coming from the same similar background, and being able to actually discuss and talk about these issues that we all face in our everyday neighborhoods and growing up in our communities. So that was very, very powerful. I think the biggest thing for me there was being able to have real deal like conversations about God and about um, like I said, the things that we were all going through together. So it really helped me build camaraderie and a friendship with a lot of people that were there. And there was a speaker there, and his name was Bill something. Can't remember what his name was, but he would speak. And by the end of the time that you were there, he would speak, and it was like his story. He was going each day something else. You have a group of questions, you have a questions, you go back, discuss it with your group, and then the next day it was like that every day, and then it finally ended with an altar call. By the time that happens, especially in the missionary world, very awesome at getting you to a place to be able to open it and get you to a place of where you're very vulnerable. I became a Christian at this camp, which, to be honest, I'm still very honest about it till still to this day. Even though I'm not a Christian, I know that that experience saved my life because I was heading into high school, and now coming from my middle school years, um, I was already expelled out of the school district. So this is my first chance. I'm like really getting a chance to start over. I was expelled from the school district. I was involved in a street gang, Gangster Disciple Nation, or BGD, Black Gangster Disciple. And I was very, very active and headed down the wrong path before I got involved at this place. So after that, I go into high school thinking to myself, I'm gonna be a very quiet kid. My high school, unfortunately, not a large percentage of the kids graduated, predominantly African American high school. I went in, we didn't even have books. Had Xerox copies, and this was, state school, but we were dynamite in sports, number one in the country in basketball, um, and and football also too. We ranked high. We win our division every year by a lot. We were very, very good. Track, we were winning state after state after state, but we were last in test scores. So that obviously meant if you weren't going to college on a sports scholarship, then most likely a lot of people ended up on the streets. So that was why that encounter was so powerful, and it needed to happen for me right at that time. My music had been my love. I thought I would go into high school very, very quiet, until there was like a public assembly and all the classes were battling in different sports, and they decided to do a rap battle. And I was forced by my class to go, and I beat all the seniors and everybody else, and I became like a very, very popular kid in school, and that really distracted me from where I thought I was going, as I was becoming, more spiritual, more involved. And I would say around my 10th grade year, my second year of high school, um, I had this amazing moment that I still hold on to this day. That I don't know what happened. It just was out of nowhere. I remember coming back from my lunch period and walking in through the doors and just being hit. It was like a light went off. And what happened to me inside, what I was hearing, what I was feeling, was that you don't belong here. I'm looking around, and it's all my friends I grew up with. I knew them very well, saying you don't belong here. And I'm thinking to myself, what is this? What's going on with me? And I felt so out of place, and I felt like I knew something that nobody else knew, but I didn't know what it was. I couldn't put my finger on what it was that I knew. But it was a very, very powerful experience, and I'll tell you more about it after this next song. Yeah, whenever we down, he can lift us up. Ain't a difficulty too difficult for us. If only we would trust and keep our heads up. The sky we can touch, yeah, but I feel like I'm already gone. Been lifting the weight on my own. I feel like I lost my home, and I'm feeling so out of my zone. Yeah, so when it's dark out I can't see. Yeah, so can you wave a light for me? It's hard. From Egypt to Babylon, the Holocaust. Inquisition would pivot us to the pogroms. Yeah, from the Greeks and now in Rome. Yeah, but we fight back to light. They got a problem cause this neshama won't expire. We moving on. We show the whole entire world no fear of us. And so we make a flame for this miracle. Yeah. So we make it 8 days, 8 nights. We call it 8 flames, 8 lights. We light a flame for this miracle. We light a flame for this miracle. So we make it 8 days, 8 nights. And you can call it 8 flames, 8 lights. We light a flame for this miracle. So we light a flame for this miracle. I'm standing here, but I can't hold myself. I know I need the help of someone else. I am my brother's keeper. I can use my hand to be my brother's keeper. We gon' fly away. Not in a million years, cause 6 million tears be ignored still. These are arms of steel, King David's shield, Operation Moses, Ethiopian Trojan. He gave the mighty to the weak and the many to the few. In a minute, it was through. Even in the dark, we lighted through. So now I give my light to you, but we fight back to light that fire. They got a problem cause this neshama won't expire. We moving on, we show the whole entire world no fear in us. So we make a flame for this miracle. So we make it 8 days, 8 nights. We call it 8 flames, 8 nights. We light the flame for this miracle. We light the flame for this miracle. So we make it 8 days, 8 nights. Call it 8 flames, 8 lights. For this miracle. Yes, and we light the flame for this miracle. So we make it 8 days, 8 nights, 8 flames, 8 lights. So we light the flame for this miracle. So we make it 8 days, 8 nights, call it 8 flames, 8 light the flame for this miracle. So we light the flame for this miracle. So there I was after having this experience, and I started to feel to myself like, wow, God's trying to tell me something. I didn't exactly know what it was, but I felt like God was trying to tell me something. So after spending most of my ninth grade year completely distracted, having rap battles every single week, recording songs, being at the studio as much as I could, I was working with a producer. Vitamin D was like my production Rebbe and Guru, and then also Bean One was a producer I was working with. Bean One would come pick me up after football practice. We would go to his studio and record for hours. So I was like so like distracted from even that experience I'd had that summer leading into my high school years. And so after I had this moment, I was like, I got to go get myself like involved. God's trying to tell me something. So I ended up going back to the center that I was at, and I became too involved. I was there more than I was at home. And I joined every single leadership program, every Bible study group. I became a junior missionary. I helped go build orphanages in Mexico and unprivileged places. So we were I found myself very, very involved um, and in love with what I was learning and in my growth. It'd be interesting because even at that time, and I would see even earlier in my life, I'd always been somewhat of a deeper thinker, and I would ask deeper questions. And even then, when I was still in the Bible study, I would ask a lot of questions. And because I was so involved, like reading my Bible, I got a little bit too involved. Like I was like not doing my homework because I was like reading my Bible in class. It was so bad that my Bible had been highlighted so much. It was no point to even having a highlighter because the whole thing was highlighted. I color coded it: blue, red, pink, whatever. And so I became what you would call a classic Bible thumper. And like I said, this was still very good for me, judging based on where I was at. And the more and more I started to see that this was something that I actually enjoyed, I got into outreach. And so it wasn't before long that I had like more than half of the kids from my high school going to all these different programs and leadership groups and fun hangout things that we put together. So I became like the poster child for this place. And right around my 11th grade year, my music started to spread even more, like amongst all the high schools and stuff like that. So my name was getting out there a little bit. And it so happened that a very, very awesome thing what happened to me during this time. This was my summer, my 10th grade going into my 11th grade year, that I actually met my wife. Thank God. My wife has been there by my side since we were 17. We're high school sweethearts. And you know that as you talk about miracles in Chanukah, we know it's a miracle that me and my wife actually started to date because we went to rival high schools. So, I looked at everybody on the other side over there like there's no way. But Hashem brought my wife from a rival high school, and we've been together ever since. And Baruch Hashem, I always say she's a keeper. She married me twice, so for sure she's a keeper. And thank God now today, Baruch Hashem, we have 6 beautiful children. We live here in Eretz Israel, in Israel. So it's been an amazing ride. But meeting her was very, very huge. That was another game changer. And it would also happen at that time, the music started to take off a little bit more. A demo of mine had made it to the desk of an A&R at a big record label. And I got a call. And I got more calls and more calls. And we started a relationship of me sending in new records and new music. And it was after a while that they said to me, they wanted the music that was a little bit harder. What do they mean by harder? They wanted gangster rap. What was big in hip hop at that time was 50 Cent. He was really like changed the rap game. It became more gangster, a little bit more violent, a lot of bit more violent. But that was sort of the way that 50 had sort of took in the music, because he was like the leading artist at that time. Everybody wanted what already works, and although that wasn't something foreign to my person, necessarily, I'd grown up in it, I'd been around it, but it was definitely not where I was at the time. So I thought to myself, maybe this isn't for me. And they sent over a contract proposal that had a lot of money on it, and I became like 50 Cent's clone. I started making records that were just like awful, I stuff that even today I can't even go back and listen to. But it was very interesting how that change, and all I did was, sort of personify that I was a gangster again and all that. And before long, I started to become confused about who I actually was. And it brought also to company, brought in people that I had stopped hanging around with initially, sort of into the back of my circle, and even more people. And I got to a place to where even I was confused about who I was. So we'll talk more after this next song. It's my brand new song, the Hava song, Hava Nagila. Please go stream it on all your favorite platforms. Hey, I know that like him. Oh, no, he didn't. You money, I get you, and I'm like, yes, he did. Here we go. Yeah. Hava Nagila, I'm breathing. Hava Nagila, we even. Got a mazel tov for the game, but I really do the thing. Dan told me, God told me, God's man, how they know me. Call me niece in the streets, but we noble like peace. Come to hurt nobody, we just came to the party like it's $59.99. They gon' see us in a prime. Big house coming down, from the sky to the crowd. We gon' scream it out loud. Black, Jewish, and I'm proud. Ain't no political, man. Ain't no political stance. But when the beat knock, I jam. And I got the Hava in hand. Read cool when the beat smooth. 16s on a sweet tune. Fast forward, then I rerun it. Then I get down how we do. Hava Nagila, hey. Hava Nagila. Yeah, Hava Nagila. They lick their feet up. Hava Nagila. So they lick their feet up. Hava Nagila. So they lick their feet up. Hava Nagila. So they lick their feet up. I'm back on my steez. I'm rapping the beat. Yeah. And it happens to be, I see how they reacting to me. Yeah. I stay running from drama, but everyone I know and they mama got burning questions on the table. They want answers if I'm able. Mr. Black, do you got a caption on Mr. Cannon and the Jacksons? Did you read Wiley on Twitter? Shut the feed, none of them considered. They may be strong, but I'm bigger. So I move on, I won't listen. Cause I work for the boss. So I'ma win cause he rigged it. All of it's predicted. I ghost ride the whip and then whip it. Speeding on them, no tickets. God touched me, so I'm gifted. I got plans to make him dance. I came here to make a move. I know this feel familiar, but this a brand new groove. Nagila, hey. Hava Nagila. Said they pick their feet up. Said Hava Nagila. Said they pick their feet up. Hava Nagila. Said they pick their feet up. Hop in the gear. They pick their feet up. Yeah. Tequila. Thank you guys. Like I said, that's a brand new song that just came out a few days ago. I also released another song actually today. Um, and releasing songs every single week. Brand new song coming out. So if you haven't been following, please follow along and listen to the new music. So anyway, like I said, this desk of this A&R has my music on it. He's calling me. He made a big proposal for a lot of money, and I sold my soul for a contract I didn't even have yet. It was just a proposal, and and I'm in this state of confusion because is this really who I am? Hashem allowed for me to meet the best girl on earth, and around her, I'm somebody else. My wife was a good girl, church going girl, um, very very different upbringing than me. Things weren't always like super different, but she was more shielded. My family was not shielding anything from me, so I got to see a lot, live through a lot. And so when I was around her, I was one way. And when I was with my friends and I was around, the guys I was around, I was a different person. So that's why I was confusing myself. And I think as time went on, I remember sitting with the reporter. It happened to me twice as this happened, that after having the interview, the person said to me, you know what, you're not actually really a bad guy. Like, you're really like you're a cool person, like. And I was thinking, like, what was I supposed to be? And when I thought about the music and everything else I was putting out, I was like, I realized, I said, wow, I can't believe I'm keep coming to them in darkness, expecting for people to see light. And that was like the beginning of me really starting to ponder and think about like the music that I was putting out, the songs that I was putting out in the music. And that was really the beginning. It didn't really hit me, but that was the beginning. And um, one big thing what happened to me before I was able to put out my first full length project. I was in the studio late one night recording with a good friend of mine, and my mother at this time was addicted to narcotics, and I would go up every I don't know, every 20, 30 minutes or whatever, go check on my mother because she was dozing off. And it wasn't like normal. I had lived with her for many years, seeing her struggle with her addiction. So that particular night, I noticed that things were different. It was a little bit heavier. And I remember sitting on the stairs at the time with my talking on the phone with my wife to be after I put my mother to sleep in my bed. And I told her, I said, I feel like one day she's not gonna wake up. And I would say it was maybe 4 or 5 hours later that my dad and my sister came downstairs and told me my mother was dead. I remember running up, shaking her, and I remember the pain that I experienced at that time was the greatest pain still today that I maybe experienced in my life. And it was a pain that I wouldn't have wished on anybody. I was 19. My mother was 37 when she died. And I remember for years after that, looking at other people who had their mother that were 50 years old, 60-year old, and they still had a mother. And quietly in my heart, I questioned God on why. I never questioned God and his existence or being a part of my life, but just only why was it such a short time? Shortly after this, with all that pain and everything that I had, it definitely pushed me into the studio harder, and I would shortly have to release my first project, which started to make a lot of noise, good noise. And the press picked it up. One detail I did leave out: my mother and my father both were hip hop artists back in the early '80s. They actually started hip hop in Seattle, so that was a big story for Seattle and all the major papers and different things like that. They were able to dig up and say, "Wow, this is so and so's son." So that became a big story. So that kind of like was something to talk about. It was a novelty at the time, and things started to spread. And one of the things that was big in rap at that time was, if you're an artist and you want to get yourself out there, one way to fast track it is if you can take shots at the guy that everybody's paying attention to right now on a song, and if he says something back, then people are gonna say, "Oh, well, who's that?" So it was like a cheap way of promotion. And so there was one artist who decided to make a song about me. And the guys, like I said, that I was around, this wasn't just rap music. They actually lived this life. It wasn't like, so the natural suggestion wasn't to make a song back. It was to go and find the guy and beat him up at a nightclub and everything else, which I'm embarrassed to say, but this is what happened. We ended up going to a nightclub and ended up in a major serious altercation. And I'll tell you more after this next song. Yeah. Yeah. That's that 120 music. If you guys familiar, sing along. I won't be mad. Yo. I'm on it like you want it. I'll be there like Jackson 5. You waiting, but you can't sit. See, I'm running behind the lines. Good prints be so hard to find. You know I be with you. We've been cool since 99, and we done had some issues. Everything we've been through ain't nothing but a test of faith. You know that God sent you. We ain't felt it, we just cried. I have sight girls on my side. Yes, I changed the way I think, but now I still you in the side. Run the ride, river flowing, hop inside. You know you so special. I left you for a few years and I really regret those. I'ma make it up to you, but I can do my best though. I'ma show you to the world I'm holding. I won't let go and treat you like my best friend, like my best friend, like my best friend. Yeah, yeah. Hey, treat you like my best friend, like my best friend, like my best friend. Yeah, yeah. Hey, I'ma turn it up, I'ma turn it up, I'ma turn it up. Hey, I'ma turn it up, I'ma turn it up, I'ma turn it up. Hey. Look, I play you when I get low. I know that you lift me whenever I am anywhere. See, I'm taking you with me. You know I can't listen if it ain't really hitting. Stereo or mono, I don't follow if it's glitching. You scratch me when I'm itching. Put away the nonsense. They wanna come between us, but they dealing with a monster. Even at my concerts, you know you be the loudest. And every step you step with me, and we can step for hours. Don't want it to ever end. I don't have a better friend. With all the pain and back and forth, we can never sever it. We know the connection there. Whomever we ever share, you know we like best friends, and I'm forever treat ever you there. Like my best friend, like my best friend, like my best friend. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Treat you like my best friend, like my best friend, like my best friend. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'ma turn it up, I'ma turn it up, I'ma turn it up, turn it up. Yeah, I'ma turn it up, I'ma turn it up, I'ma turn it up. Yeah. So I want to take this time to thank everybody, obviously, who is here on the Zoom. Hopefully everybody is here on the Zoom and nobody like left the room. This is our time to shine together. Hashem Chanukah, like I said, is my favorite holiday. I'll tell you a little bit more as we get a little further along. Also, to keep me on the time, I have no offense to the rabbis, but I have rabbi syndrome. If you give me a microphone and you put me in front of people, I can go all night long. All night long. So I don't want to put anybody to sleep. But I do want to say, everybody, give a round of applause for all of everything uh, that the Lubavitcher Rebbe has been able to do to mamash spread Hashem's light all throughout the whole entire world. He literally spreading God's light all throughout the world. And I'm gonna tell you a few places that his light is spread. His light is spread to Chabad of Manchester, Vermont, Chabad of North Dakota, Chabad in Milford, Massachusetts, and Brattleboro, Vermont, Chabad of Barrington, Rhode Island, Bet Abraham, Bangor, Maine, Chabad of Wilmington. This is crazy. Look at this. Chabad of Eastern Connecticut, Chabad of Nashville. I've never been to Nashville. That's a hint, hint. And Chabad of St. George, Utah, Chabad of South Shore, Boston, Chabad of Altoona. Altoona? I've never been to Altoona neither. But tuna rhymes with the Muna. Chabad of Brandon, the Chabad of Anthem, a Chabad of Harford County, Chabad of Maine, and Middlebury, Vermont. Is that Vermont? It's amazing. Chabad of Santa Fe, stand up. Dutchess County of New York, Chabad of Spokane. Shout out to Rabbi Han. Chabad of Lubavitch of Idaho, Chabad of KU, Chabad of Salem, Oregon, and Chabad of Kalamazoo. Wow. West Michigan. Chabad of Peoria, Illinois, and Chabad of Southern Oregon. No offense about the Oregon thing earlier. And the Chabad of Champaign and Chabad of Parkland, Utah. The Rebbe's Light is Mama Spread. I'll tell you more about the Rebbe's Light. So after I get into this altercation with this guy, we leave this scene, police come, everything breaks up, we all go our separate ways, and we thought it was all over. About 20 minutes later, I get a phone call from somebody saying that the police are looking for me. And I'm like, what are the police looking for me? Because I got into a fight outside, like it was outside of a nightclub. It was like, no big deal. I said, no, the police said you came and you were shooting and the whole everything. And it was a complete fabrication of the story. It didn't happen that way. So, but when in doubt, you run. So I started leaving out of the place I was at when I met up with a few guys of mine. And I started going to my car and I seen police lights flashing like crazy, but they were all over the place as police. But they were not in my vicinity, which I initially thought, but the lights had reached very far. So I started walking down the street to see what all the commotion was about. And I seen there was a very, very close friend of mine who unfortunately had made it up in his mind to go and take the life of the other person that I had the altercation with. The most awesome, most beautiful thing was he was a horrible shot and he shot everything except for the guy. And maybe because in the streets we don't do too much target practice, he missed, completely missed. And the police ended up getting him, taking him into custody, but it put me in a very, very bad dilemma because now everybody knew my connection to him. Like he was a very close friend of mine, someone I would consider like a brother. And the guys that on the other side are now thinking that I just sent somebody to go and take their life. And so now it put me in a situation to where now they think they have to come and take care of me because I'm the main problem. I'm who the altercation was with, who the real conflict was with. And now I just sent somebody, they thought. And so now I'm thinking of myself that if I don't go and take his life, then he's going to come and take my life. And I always say to everybody, no matter how much you want to involve yourself in the streets and pretend or play gangster, you will have your chance to show if this is the real life that you want to live and what you're really about. And I decided for me when this situation hit me that this was not the type of life I wanted to live, but perhaps it was too late. So I went home and I remember just crying and breaking down. I fell to my knees and I started praying. All of a sudden, we're back to God again. And I started praying because I never imagined that I would get to such a place in my life to where every time I leave, I'm going to have to take my gun. I'm going to have to. So for me, it was a very, very hard decision for me to make. Very, very hard decision for me to make. I'll tell you more after this next song. Yeah. Shout out to D Scribe. Shneur Hasofir. Here we go. So, dark, light, spark, yeah. So now I figure we speak on the topic of we, cause when you look at it deep, we see the opposite, see? Whether Sephardi, Taimani, or Ashkenazi, it won't matter to a Nazi if he's Ethiopian, if he's religious, or Mizrahi, we all know the incredible, but somehow we never let it go. We'll let Hashem choose it, but his words are these and those, yeah. We sweep it under the rug and say it's all sababa. Remember, he won't see a goof, he'll only see neshamas, yeah. So if you like I love, yacha, yacha, yacha. My people, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Germanic, Italian, Japanese, Indian, or Pakistani. If you love like I love, yacha, yacha, yacha. For Labour, God is one, we stand forever. Cinematic, feel the static. Yeah. When I feel alone, I'm lost in my head. Since this hatred, united. Don't get me wrong, because I see we have our differences, and I've listened now, so listen here. Our differences can't be conditioned on maintaining fear. We have to grow with each other, try to rebuild one another, see the good in our brother, support the Gavin to love him. See, this can lift us from our pain and all our sorrow, because Hashem's with us if we're together, even in a voda zara. Chas v'shalom, but the nakuda is the unity for you and me. So push the notion of them. So now let's call it we. 1, 2, 3. So hey, like I love, scream yacha, yacha, yacha. Side to side, my people can be Hispanic, Puerto Rican, or Germanic, Italian, Japanese, Indian, or Pakistani. Hey, hey, hey. Yacha, yacha, yacha. Later, God is one, we stand forever. Cinematic, feel the stats. When I feel alone, my head, senseless hatred. Everybody take one finger for actors, for one. We're gonna spin it in the air like this. Here we go, like one. Don't matter what's young, all I see is you. That is just the truth. Together, forever. From up above, it don't matter what color. All I see is you, my brother. Time we're together, heavens open up, yes, we'll be forever. Joy from up above. So I'm crying, I'm praying, asking God for some type of way out of this situation. Some type of way out of this situation. And I experienced a miracle. The miracle was that my phone rang little while after, it was a few days, and I pick up the phone. It's the other guy on the other side of the phone. Now, why would I call this a miracle? There's an old saying in the streets that probably came from a very, very famous rap lyric by a very, very famous New Yorker, from very, very famous Brooklyn, from Bed-Stuy. And it says, shoot first, ask questions last. This is like a code of the streets. So the fact that somebody was on the other line of the phone trying to investigate a matter about whether or not I was trying to kill him was like a complete miracle. For me at that time, I was just like, wow, I can't believe like he's on the phone and this is the way that he wanted to handle it. And we were able to put everything behind us. That was my miracle. I was able to get out of that situation. And for me, it was great because it really allowed for me to hit a reset, and it really allowed me to do what we call cheshbon nefesh, to really take an accounting and to really start looking at myself. And one of the things that I started to ask myself is, how did you get here? How do you go from a junior missionary helping build orphanages and being involved in all these different leadership groups and programs and the poster child for the Union Gospel Mission, and you're this, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a place, a situation where you're like, I'm here. And if I don't go take this person's life, he's going to come and take mine, and the whole mess. So I was able to really think about my future and really think about the person I really wanted to be. And so I decided for myself to lay low for a little bit and to stay at home. And while I stayed at home, I prayed. I was praying day and night. I was praying. I started praying a lot. And I really, at this time, I realized for myself that the only thing that would bring me comfort is if I had a close, deep connection with the Creator, with God. And so, meanwhile, I'm praying, I'm doing all of this. Then I decided, like, let me pick up my Bible again. Like, let me really go through it. And I think maybe as a result of all the praying and really soul searching and really seeking, I was able to look at the Bible a little bit differently. And what happened while I was having all these experiences, spending all this time with God, with the Creator at this time, I started to remember that when I was in my Bible study groups and different things like that as a kid, I had a lot of questions, as I mentioned before. And I wasn't necessarily given the answer, or at least a satisfying answer. And so I decided to look up things for myself. The more and more I started to look, because it's like, after a while, you start to notice things you never noticed before. And one of the things I noticed was that, you know, JC was Jewish. So like, what does that mean? What's the implications of that? And if he was Jewish, then how come Christians were not Jewish? Like how do we get to a different religion? So I started to search, and I got very like wrapped up in this searching. Before you know it, I was going through the Quran, had a few different versions of the Christian Bible, had a JPS Tanakh and I think in a Chumash at this time, and I was going through all these different texts. Now, mind you, me and my wife had just got married. We just had our first kid by this time, and she had no idea about what was going on. And so the more and more I started to search, I started to find that I wanted to really have this close relationship with God. And obviously, when I started to look online, I went to Rabbi Google, and from Rabbi Google led me to Chabad.org, of course. And it was like almost everything Jewish I had typed in, Chabad.org came up. I would type in Michael Jackson and Chabad.org would come up. So I started going on there, and it really led me to Judaism. Eventually, I started going to a Messianic congregation, and on the end of that, I started going to a Chabad on the east side. So let's do Shemelech. And then we'll come back to this. Yeah. You guys know the words, sing along. Yeah. This is the world makeover. Mashiach will come take over. You ain't gotta be me or see what I see. All you gotta do is take a look forward. Lift up your eye to the sky, spread out your hands, say thank you, smile. Get them up, leave them up, ha ha. Yep, pump up the volume every day. Stand in place, heart racing, no words to say. Pressure building, trying to hold my face, and my mind is drifting like not today. Wake up from everything. Break out your shell and scream, ha, Shem, you're the king. Ha, Shem, you're the king, everybody. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch, Leolam Vaed. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch. Here we go. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch, Leolam Vaed. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch, Leolam Vaed. Yeah. I feel the cold in the rain. I wanna get up and leave. Said I wanna get up. Everything's always the same. I wanna get up. Said I wanna get up. Now we're standing here, and the night's so clear, like the shine upon your crown. Yeah, we're up so high in the midnight sky, and we'll never come back down. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, our Father, King David's rock your honor. We give our life the stronger, we clean you dry. The blessing, the bracha, success, Hatzlacha. The world is yours, you offer it to whomever calls you. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch, Leolam Vaed. 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 We're gonna break it down right here, like we're gonna break it down right here. Yep. We're gonna break it down right here. Yeah. Wake up, my friend, we gone. We praising Hashem with all of our soul. The Kleeper is fighting, we know. We raging a war, we won't let him go. Even if the world don't turn, the fire will burn. The H-Town me, a korban, self-sacrifice. Yep, put H on me. We clapping loud, screaming loud. We gonna take that crown, bring it back straight to the king. Then we bow, Malchut complete. Yeah. Pick up a mitzvah, lay down a chait. Olam haba, olam hazeh. The feeling is great when we can say, praise Hashem, his name is great. The night so clear, like the shine upon your crown. Yeah, we're up so high in the midnight sky, and we'll never come back down. Hey. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch, Leolam Vaed. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch, Leolam Vaed. Thank everybody for tuning in. I really appreciate you. My love to every single person that's on the Zoom and all the shluchim and all of your beautiful and wonderful mishpachas that go out and spread Hashem's light all over the world. I'm not saying it just because I'm in front of you. Anybody that knows me, even have a Bresel of a Chassid, how much love and affinity I have not only for the Rebbe, but for the Rebbe's Hasidim. And I thank you all for having me on this program. I appreciate you so much. I wish everybody a Chanukah Sameach, and it should be a year full of light, and no darkness should prevail over Hashem's light. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nissim.
Wow, listen, that was fantastic. That was so inspirational. Thank you, all the Chabad communities that joined together. I'm sure we're all inspired. We have to take the message of Hanukkah, the message that Nissim shared, and continue throughout the year, first with the next 2 days of Hanukkah, and then spread the light throughout the year. And together, we will be able to make much difference in this world, transforming this world, and getting the world ready for the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days. Thank you so much, and happy Hanukkah to all.
Amen, amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rabbi Sternberg, and thank you, Nissim, so much. I want to open up, if anyone has Q&As, if you have any questions to Nissim, if you could post it on the chat. I opened up the chat so you could post the questions only. Okay, so we have one question.
Questions if we have.
How did he realize Judaism?
It's a very good question. Judaism was the choice because as I was going through all the different texts from the different religions, the thing that stuck out to me about Judaism was the ups and downs and the honesty of the story. It was a very honest story as opposed to the other religions. Everything was perfect. That person was perfect, and there were no mistakes, right? And that was the thing for me as a person who made many mistakes. It would just naturally resonate to me that seeing how many ups and downs that the Jewish people had as a collective, seeing the mistake that Moses made when he hit the rock instead of speaking to the rock, and seeing King David make the mistakes that he was a mistake that he made, that it was this constant up and down. And the most beautiful thing about it, that I guess what probably attracted me more than anything else, that no matter what bad thing that had to happen because of those mistakes, God never gave up on the Jewish people. And just to see that type of love and type of relationship was very, very inviting for me, as opposed to everything being perfect the other way around. And, on top of that, there were plenty other errors and mistakes that were very, very obvious and blatant in the other religions that also didn't have a lot of answers for me, primarily in Christianity. But although I have a lot of respect and have had a lot of respect for Christianity, and really appreciative about what at the time that it came into my life. So, but that was probably one of the biggest things for me. And I came to a conclusion. I think at the end of everything, I said that God may change his mind once, then he changes it twice, right? So once or twice, he could change his mind another time. The Jewish story was consistent. What happened on Har Sinai, on Mount Sinai, and the Torah that was given to Moses, and all the way until Mashiach comes. There's the whole story. Everybody else added something new, and God changed his mind about the way he did things, and now it needs to be a new way. So I felt more comfortable and more secure with the Jewish story than I did with the others.
Okay, just if anyone's reading this, there's a 14-year-old boy who wants to be in touch with Nissim. So if you're reading this, can you, Brad, if you could chant with him directly. So here's another question. There's a lot of questions. It's hard to follow all of them. But how is the African-American community? What's your relationship with them? Do they support what you're doing, your path in life?
It's very interesting because I think, I experienced the bulk of my anti-Semitism probably came from the African American community, more so in the beginning because it was very, very foreign. Even my family was very, like, it was very, very foreign to them, to see me take the path that I'd taken in life. But I would say now, um, I've definitely seen a lot more of me being celebrated, in the African American community as years have gone on. And I think, 2020, especially, since I made a conscious decision to 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 sonically, be approachable, meaning that the music is more approachable from a sonic standpoint for a person who grew up in my type of neighborhood and different things like that. Although the content may be different, but sonically, people can get into it. And I think, sort of celebrating, my happiness to be who I am, sort of deads a lot of questions that people have, about, my authenticity, my authenticity to and my devotion to Judaism, and my authenticity in representing and being very happy about my skin color and where I come from. So, I really made it an effort to, sort of like, spell any myths or ideas about it. So I've actually seen things turn around for me, honestly, and being more celebrated in the African American community.
Okay, let's do one or two more questions here. Judaism comes with a lot of hard work and changing one's lifestyle. Did that hold you back at all? Was it hard? How did
No,
that
I don't
journey
think
go?
it. I don't think so, because, um, I know we ran out of time, but one of the most amazing experiences that I had with everything was that I fell in love with Hashem. I fell in love with God through me reading and spending as much time. I wasn't just reading these texts. I was going out fasting 3 days at a time, no food, going out crying to God, begging for the truth. So that that allowed me to develop such a love in my heart for God. And I say, like any two people that have spent a lot of time together, you start to develop the same interests as the other person. You start to love what they love. You know what they're gonna laugh at, jokes. Some people, I always say, they spend so much time with the dog, they start to look like their dog. But I was spending so much time with the Shem, I wouldn't let him go for a second. I wouldn't let God go for a second. And I felt like, being able to read, when you read inside and you see the love that God has for the Jewish people, and how much love, that, David HaMelech, for instance, talks about, King David talks about his love for the Torah, you naturally develop that type of love. And so, um, I was so on fire, I would say, that I didn't feel anything in the way got burnt up. So when it came to keeping Shabbat, or when it came to eating kosher, I didn't feel pain from any of that. I was so in love with God. I was looking for the next thing I could do. I made a lot of mistakes along the way because of that, but thank God I was able to do it. And everything, I didn't feel it at all. I'm being completely honest.
Okay, so s- someone really wants to know this. What drew you to Breslov?
What drew me to Breslov? Uh, I think if you listen to my story, I spent a lot of time in his bodhidus and personal tefillahs, and that was really how I came to a lot of my conclusion that this was the path that I wanted to. I sort of felt like there was a truth that I was able to capture from spending all those hours of crying and fasting, spending that time with God, that allowed me to see the truth. So when I started coming across the Sephorim of Rabbi Nachman, I think first thing was Rabbi Arush, who did a book, called The Garden of Peace, which was a marital guide, because I was moving at 100 miles per hour towards Judaism, and my wife was going like 35 in a residential, with the with the hazard lights on. So it was creating, obviously, a lot of friction, a lot of problem. I ended up reading this book, and my wife was very spiritual. She was on board, but she wasn't on board with moving as fast as I was. I read this book and watched my marriage change, watched my life change, and he continuously. And a lot of people read the book and they're like, "Oh well," but one of the things he keeps saying over and over again is tefillah, the prayers. So I finally, from that, got a hold of Rabbi Nachman's books, and I felt like it was speaking to my soul from like and it was things that I felt like inside I knew these things. It was just a major kesher and connection that I had with especially the form that he had on tefillahs, like Hishtabchut Nefesh, the outpouring of the soul. So once I read that, it was sort of like I found my home.
Okay, well, thank you, Nissim, so much. We really appreciate you waking up at ungodly hour of 2 a.m. By the way, I know you could send regards to Jacob Lennon.
Will
He's
do.
right there,
Definitely
right there in the
will do.
neighborhood.
Yeah,
So
will
thank
do.
you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us
Thank you,
and
guys.
making this event possible. We wish you all a happy Hanukkah. Continue to share those lights. Happy Hanukkah to all. Thank you so much. Okay, let's unmute all.
Everyone's like, wow.
Wow.
Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you.
Happy Hanukkah.
Out to Samson, New Mexico.
Happy
Happy
Hanukkah,
Hanukkah.
everyone.
Happy Hanukkah!
Happy Hanukkah!
Happy Hanukkah!
Happy
Happy
Hanukkah!
Hanukkah!
Rabbi
Sameach.
Happy Hanukkah!
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah!
Happy Hanukkah!
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy
Hanukkah!
Nice.
Louisiana.
Something else.
This is the best!
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah!
Okay, happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah!
We can't get our camera for some reason.
That was
Oh,
awesome.
well.
Thank you, Nissim.
Thank you.
Happy Hanukkah, everyone. Thank you so much. for
Happy
joining us.
Hanukkah, everyone.
If you don't want me to hear you, I'll
Happy Hanukkah.
I know. Happy Hanukkah from Boston.
Look at that. Evan's
Yes.
on pen.
Happy Hanukkah from Pennsylvania.
Happy Hanukkah from Sandy, Utah.
Happy Hanukkah from Spokane.
Happy Hanukkah from Salina.
Happy Hanukkah from Peoria.
This is so great. Where's our camera?
Hanukkah from Victorville.
Well, it's never going to be a good time for everybody, right? You know,
Yes.
it's never going to be. If we hit this in the middle of the night, they could have done it earlier, I guess, but. Like an hour ago. Yeah.
What? Because if people are gonna leave, they'll leave slowly.
All right. Enough. So, how do I get out?
Does anybody know where Nissim was broadcasting from? Because it was 2 a.m. where he is. Was he in Israel?
Israel,
Yeah.
Israel, in
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. Jerusalem.
Sorry?
From
In Israel.
Jerusalem.
He was in Israel.
Yes, ma'am.
Fabulous. Fabulous.
Uh,
Happy Hanukkah, everybody.
Happy Hanukkah, everyone.
Good night.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Children. Wonderful to hear the children. Enjoyed. Good night from Maine.
All right. Yeah, I will.
Yeah, these are all gone. All right. Okay. Good night, all.